Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Tongues. I'm here today with Chef Einav. Chef Einav joined Restaurant Associates in 2021 as chef innovator, supporting the company's continued path of quality, innovation, growth, and purpose. Her career began as a pastry chef at Orna and Ella, and then as sous chef at Mul Yam in Tel Aviv. Since then, Inav has traveled the world, growing and sharing her experiences. A graduate of the Institute of Culinary Education, she interned at New York's Daniel Restaurant and was the executive chef at Denal in Manhattan's East Village. Chef Inav contributed to the book Art and Cook, published in November 2003 to great reviews, both as a recipe book and as an art collection. And from 2003 to 2008, the chef was a professional chef instructor at the Institute of Culinary Education in Manhattan, where she was responsible for training aspiring chefs in all aspects of cooking and presentation. In 2014, she held a TED Talk and competed on the acclaimed Food Network competition show, Chopped. Thank you for being here today, Chef. How are you?
Oh, awesome. Personally, I'm well. I wish the world would have been in a better place, but we have to start with me, right?
Right.
You.
I'm so
Mhm.
happy to welcome you to the show and to have you here and have an opportunity to talk a bit about your story and talk about your career. I like to start each episode with the same question, which is what is your first language and which languages have you learned to speak?
So my first language is Hebrew, being born and raised in Israel. That was my first language. However, at home, my parents spoke German. That was the language we spoke. My parents spoke, so the kids wouldn't understand. And then we learned, I started learning English at the age of 4, and then a little bit of Arabic, and then a little bit of French. So yes, not
Very
English and Hebrew, but enough to perk my ears.
very multilingual. Did you have these opportunities to learn the other languages in school?
Yes. Yes. So English and Arabic are mandatory.
Mm.
And at seventh grade, you can choose if you want to continue with Arabic or switch to French. I switched to French. I wish I would have continued with Arabic, but we're all smarter in retrospect, right? So, yes, but English was ongoing till you graduate.
Yeah, yeah. Is it where you grew up, was it very typically multilingual in that way that you experienced, or was your experience with language unique?
So everyone who goes to school in Israel studies English as a second language and chooses a third language down the road with Hebrew as the main. But when I grew up, and yet a lot of the people in Israel were descendants of different nationality or came from different places to Israel. So you did hear a lot of languages growing up just by nature of your neighbors.
Yeah, that's so interesting to have that multilingual society and be able to communicate. Tell us a bit about your culinary journey and what your experience has been like connecting with other cuisines and people who speak different languages and how you've been able to connect to those cultures and cuisines, maybe through language or your travels.
I think it's through all of that. In my point of view, and why I love food so much, it's because it's a reflection of a culture, and you cannot isolate a cuisine or food from the history of where it came from. Uh, that's the beauty of that. That's why sometimes you have the same dish but different recipes, because throughout the years the heritage of your grandmother or wherever they came from, nuances changed. And I think food is a language all by itself, and usually a language of peace and togetherness, because you can argue over food, but you'll never like flip a table, right? Or hopefully not. But I think especially in restaurants, everywhere you go, a kitchen is such a literally melting pot of languages, because you do have people that come from different ethnicities and speak different languages. Not only in the States where you have a lot of Spanish, maybe in the kitchen in Israel, we had Romanian workers and Filipino workers. So you start picking the nuances. And yes, I know it's kitchen language, not always the nicest word in the vocabulary, but you pick on those nuances and how the tonation of how to speak to each other. And I love that. I think it's definitely another layer of why it's so fascinating. In the kitchen, in particular, being in such a high stress environment that is so socially congested, right? You're so close to one another. Kitchens are inherently small. You bump into people. You have very little time. You need to find the most efficient way to communicate and make sure that what you have said has been transferred, right? So if you're in a multi-lingual kitchen, you're probably going to veer to English to make sure. So orders will come in English. You will speak them out in English. You will say the word back heard, much like you say here, even in Israel. But the nuances of like how to say a fish or a shrimp in Filipino or something like that, because I need my prep person to go and clean more shrimp. You you really learn how to say that to make sure that the message is being transferred. And for me, it's also a matter of respect. I think there's an element of respect by making the effort to learn somebody else's language, even if it's nuances. I'm not expected to speak fluently, but just ask, hey, how do you say that? And repeat that. I think it's so respectful to somebody else to say that their language is just as important.
Absolutely. And it makes things move smoother, and it instills trust in the chefs that you're working with, and instills trust as a team, because if you can't trust the person next to you, you can't trust the person who's leading you, then things break down, and then nobody's happy. So it's so important to get to communicate on those levels. I know that in the Middle East we have a lot of dishes that are similar in ingredients and maybe have different names or different preparations depending on where you move throughout the region. Can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe how, if you can, it's okay, but how the language, as you're moving from Hebrew to Arabic and languages in between, how does that reflect community? I'm thinking of a dish like tabbouleh or dolmas or something like that, and something that you'll see in Greece or Turkey, and you'll also see it in Egypt, you'll see it in Lebanon, or etc. But the preparations are different, the words are slightly different when they're eaten, the time of day that they're eaten. What do you notice from your community about that, or what do you notice about the way that people prepare these type of common dishes that are found throughout the region?
Well, I think it depends who prepares and what they prepare them for, right? We are in an era of exploration, of traveling through the plate, of knowing people through their foods, of knocking on people's door and become part of who they are by sitting at their tables. And we always like, oh, what was that? That was amazing. Can I get the recipe? Right. So the first time you will always do things maybe as you try them or try to mimic what you've tasted as original. But the beauty of food is then becomes the adaptation. You're like, maybe I don't like lamb, right? In Dolma, for example, it really depends where you're from. Maybe it's only rice, maybe it's rice and beef, maybe it's rice and lamb. I personally put some ground dry fruits in my lamb with my rice in the Dolma, right? Because my Russian friend, that's what she does, right? It brings that
Mm,
sweetness with the gaminess of the lamb. So you slowly see the interpretation of the same dish and
mhm,
either what your terroir or your cuisine combinations are inherently have, or through just your interpretation of the food, and then you own the recipe. And I think that's what's beautiful. So yes, it can be a dolma, but all of a sudden maybe it's not grapey. Maybe you see the dolma in a sweet star, or maybe it's a different fig leaves are big now. All kinds of things like that. That it's a little step from the tradition, but it's just branching out the tradition from where it was. And then you see all those variations of this one thing. And I think that's the beauty of food and the beauty of humans. And if we would have let only this beauty flourish, I think we would have had slightly different world, because I think it tells you something very, very fundamental, that there is room for
mm.
everybody and everything. And it doesn't need to be less. It's just a different thing, right? It can be as tasty. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, because I'm not in the industry like you, but I do feel like we have so much more exploration now through what people are doing, and I feel you tell me if you notice this, but I feel like there's so much more acceptance of, I'm going to cook this my way. I don't have to do it the way that it's traditionally been done, all the, the way generations have done it before me. And people embracing that, celebrating that. And I think, like you said, I think it's a really beautiful thing. But I'm wondering from your professional perspective, if if you've noticed that shift over time, has it been happening for a long time? Have people always had these kind of attitudes, or is it a quote unquote new thing that we're seeing?
I think saying something that is new, it's very
It's
subjective.
tricky.
What is new?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Today, right? I think with the evolution, again, because food is such a mirror to who we are and our culture, you could see the way food is being interpreted, almost like us as humans finding our voice and want to be seen like who we are. Doesn't matter if it's religion, color, or dietary restrictions. We want other people to appreciate us for who we are and not necessarily to force feed us to something just because we were born in a certain place or at a certain time. And I think that's exactly what we've seen with food. What I do see with food that I wish I would have seen more, in the grand scheme is respect to the tradition.
Okay.
There is always respect to the origin, to how it was done to begin with, and then the interpretations on that same thing, which, that doesn't mean that again that it makes it any less. It's just different, right? But I feel each chef always starts by paying homage to the original to understand the original. And based on understanding the original, you say, let me take it, put it in, put my head around it.
Mm.
But I think I would say that pretty much, we have seen a huge shift in the past 2 decades in food, and not only the willingness of the diners to accept newness and interpretations, but also how chefs are venturing beyond what we have defined as traditional. Doesn't matter if it's traditional Chinese or traditional French, it doesn't matter. We're breaking the boundaries. And I think by breaking the boundaries, we are allowing ourselves to create newness and try different things and discover. And that's why there is always something more exciting, even though I mean, how much more can you reinvent? Well, you know, as long as we are breaking those rules and putting things together, we will always invent things. And
Yeah.
that's beautiful journey.
Yeah, it's limitless. It's
Limitless.
limitless. Yeah. How did you get started in culinary industry?
So I always loved food. I was always fascinated by food. My father was a pilot for a commercial airline, and I was very, very lucky since an early age to travel the world, which in retrospect, again, as a kid, you don't see the uniqueness of that. But at that time, certainly in Israel, it was very, very different than what my friends have done. So I was very privileged just to be aware, see, taste different things. And we have a rule of thumb at home that I couldn't say no to any food without trying it. I had to earn my right to refuse it. So just saying, ew, it's mushy or it's green or, was not good enough. I had to put it in my mouth and give a reasonable explanation to why I don't like it. And that exposed me to a lot of stuff that inherited. You're like, I'm not shrimp. I'm not going to like, I was in fourth grade the first time I tried shrimp in Iceland. And it was the seafood, one of the best seafood stews I've ever had. I still remember it. I remember the restaurant. I remember it so vividly
Mm.
because that's the power of food. Like those,
Yeah.
it can totally cement those memories, right? With everything around it. So I was exposed and I did travel a lot and I was always fascinated by what people like shop or eat for dinner. I remember walking at London and the kitchen is always like one slide under the street in some, now we'd walk around and just like try to pick and see what people are cooking and go to grocery store and see what they have in their shopping cart and try to imagine what it is they're cooking for dinner. And so I'm hearing myself talking. I'm like, wow, I was a weirdo, but a lot. But it paid off.
You were passionate. Yeah.
And so that's my passion with food. That's how it started. And in when I was in my mid-teens, 16, my parents traveled. I asked them to leave me alone by myself. For me, it was preparation. My mom just stocked the fridge with stuff, and I started cooking. Started cooking for my friends, following recipes from the newspaper, playing restaurants at home. So I didn't throw drinking parties. I throw parties. And my love for the food and just, I think more than the food, just feeding others, it really, really resonated with me. But I grew up in a reality where like being a chef or being a cook at the time was very, very frowned upon. Then I career in doing my bachelor's degree in social behavior and communication, but worked at restaurants at the same time to pay for my tuition. And this is where this was it. I knew restaurants is it. That's where my heart is at its happiest. And I did finish my degree, so my parents could be happy, but followed my love for food, working in restaurants in Israel, and then packing my bag and moving to the States in 99.
Wow. So this is your destiny.
I made it my destiny.
Yeah.
It's like people say, I don't know, sometimes it meets you. I don't know if it met me or not. It definitely came into my path, and I chose to continue on that path because I really believe that even though it's a hard work, and even though at the beginning of your career, much like other careers, you may not pay monetary wise a lot, and you do work differently from your friends and family hour wise, it was so rewarding. It was
Mm.
so rewarding to create, see something come to fruition and being able to hand it over and get the feedback, better or worse, hopefully better, almost instantaneously. And I don't know, it makes me, it's a feeling I can't argue with.
Yeah.
And so I chose to stay with that feeling.
So I really want to know when you're a teenager and you're having dinner parties for
Mhm.
friends, what were you making?
A lot of Chinese food. My father was on a Chinese whatever at the time, being a pilot, he brought all kinds of stuff he didn't have handy in Israel, but bring authentic ingredients from London at the time. We had wok, chicken breast was the most common protein. And so a lot of lavish Chinese dinners and stir fries
Oh.
and such,
Mhm.
that's like my first memory of trying to make exotic things at home.
So you came to the States, you're here in the States now, and what was part of that decision that made you decide that you wanted to come here and continue your career in a new country?
And I knew everything. I knew that for a portion of my life, I would love to try to live somewhere else. But when I decided that cooking is it, at the time, cooking school in Israel was not really at its best. And I've already worked at the best restaurants in Israel. And so I had an option of either staying and moving to another good restaurant in Israel and learn through experience, or really try and find a path that will promote my profession better with potentially taking my business elsewhere at the time. And because English was the most comfortable language for me, even though I did look at the Cordon Bleu in Paris at the time. I have been in New York in the past. Prior to that, I figured that's going to be the easiest landing for me in an environment that I have at least been in one. So I wouldn't say familiar, but not totally foreign, a language that I feel more comfortable with. And so between I looked at Paris, Australia, and New York, and decided that New York will be it. And I also knew New York still is a stronghold of culinary. So if I am to learn, I might as well learn from the best at the highest paced environment, because I can set the bar. I cannot set the bar any higher than this one. So
Yeah.
saved money, packed my bags, told my boyfriend, now husband, then almost fiance, that I'm going, then he's welcome to join. Thank God he did. And here we are 26 years after.
Wow. That's wonderful. And that's such a leap of
Huge
that's a
leap of
leap.
everything.
Yeah.
And I look at my kids today and I'm like, what was I thinking?
When you're in an executive chef position, there's a lot of moving pieces, I imagine. What what are some of the responsibilities that one has on a daily basis or weekly basis when you have that amount of responsibility?
Well, it really depends where you're executive chef. If it's a restaurant, how big is the restaurant? Are you the owner? Are you not the owner? Right. But in essence, your role as an executive chef is the menu, the sourcing, the storytelling, the execution, the team, your team, scheduling your team, making sure that they know exactly what it is that you want to do. That's why I say kitchen is such a reflection of everything else in life. A chef is as good as the weakest person on its team. I've said it forever. And, it doesn't matter if it's your dishwasher, if it's your prep guy, if it's your sous chef, it doesn't matter. If you're somebody on your team that is critical for your operation, is not having a good day.
Mm.
Um, Maybe they fought with their spouse. Maybe they woke up late today. Maybe they're not feeling 100%. Maybe something else weighs on them. It doesn't matter. You show up in a kitchen, it's like show up to any sports league game. You got to show up, right? So if any part of your team is not up to par for that day, it's a domino effect of the rest of the team.
Mm.
Your job as an executive chef is first to identify it, isolate, try to solve it. And if you cannot solve it at that time, is minimize the impact that it has on your operation. That's the day to day. And you always have wrenches. There's a snowstorm, so your delivery doesn't make it. There is something happening, rice machine broke, there is so many moving parts on a daily basis. And yet you're responsible for the profit and loss. You're responsible for pricing the menu, making sure that what you're charging for X amount of dishes has the right margin because the business needs to operate. You are responsible of communicating your menu to the front of house because essentially the front of house are your marketing people. They need to sell it to the diner. But you also want to see what the diner is saying and get feedback and adjust in between. So all those are continuous moving parts that are daily, weekly. If you're the owner, you're also responsible for the whole operation. If you're a co-owner, then you have some responsibility as a co-owner as well with your other owners. So there is the rent and the insurance and all the other fun stuff that are part of it. But I think the most as an executive is the leadership. From the years of experience that I have, at the time, we didn't think of executive chefs as mentors, as leaders of other people. You kind of, as somebody who started, you sat under a chef, you observe them, and in your head, you said, I like this, file it. I don't like that, file it in a different bag. And your process goes by observing and learning and kind of having those conversations with yourself of what it is. How do you see yourself as a chef one day? Is that something behavior you want to adopt? Yes or no?
Right.
Today, it's slightly different. Today, we do know that chefs have responsibility to nurture and groom that talent in a more conscientious way.
Mm.
How do we train the talent that comes in? How do you mold them to your standards? What it is that you want them to take and learn, and what it is that you want them to take from you to build their philosophy about food, and what it is that's going to be their brand name down the line.
Yeah, that's so valuable. And I don't know anything about what goes on in the back of house, which is why I'm so curious to find out like what's going on back there.
Everything. Yeah, hugging, busyness. Not for nothing, the bear is so contagious, right? Because the culture is that.
I was like, should I ask her if she's seen the bear? Because I'm sure people ask you all the time about your thoughts about the show. It was intense. And I didn't have the mindset for that intensity, but you're saying it's an accurate portrayal of what can go on.
At least the first season, I also kind of gave up. There were things that are like, okay, come on. But I started watching the first season right after we finished the US Open, where I worked in our restaurant, Aces, expediting the cold stations. And just hearing the order being sped up through the machine, just the noise, I was like sitting there like orangeing, because it's true. Like this, like, oh my God, they keep spitting orders at me and I have all my orders already, it's this constant tension, but there is something that builds camaraderie and a team spirit and your ability to focus so sharp on one thing while filing the other things in the background in an order,
Mhm.
and knowing to get to them. I think nothing beats that in the
Yeah.
way of operation of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Woo. Wow.
Mm.
I want to take a step back to something I picked up on. You said telling a story, as part of the role of being an executive chef, and that made me want to know when you think of telling a story through food, what are some of the things that you are taking into consideration when you're constructing that narrative?
So, in my role now, right, at Restaurant Associates, where the majority of our business is feeding people, meeting them in the workday or in their museum trip, sometimes in the restaurants. Restaurants makes it easier because people know nobody goes to a restaurant without looking at a menu anymore or looking where they're going.
Yeah.
Those days are, you probably already know more or less what you're going to order before you go in to an establishment. There are a few things on the menu that caught your,
Yes.
right? But a lot of what we do today is meet people at the workplace or part of their busy day, running through a museum with a family. And first and foremost, I need to understand who am I feeding, right? Which is different than a restaurant because in a restaurant, it's who is the chef. You come to
Mm,
eat the chef's food. In my role right now, it's not about enough. It's not about the chef at the unit. It's about the people that are coming to eat. What are their limitations?
mhm,
What are their desires? What do I need to cook for them to make their day that much more special? So they can be more energetic. So they can go home and say, wow, I ate this amazing salad or bowl or sandwich, or I met them where they are. But because of who I am and because of the amount of people that I feed, I also have responsibility of where do I source this food from? How do I tailor it as a menu? Who grew this food? Who produced this food? Can I shine a light on my amazing cook that maybe it's our grandmothers that we're featuring today? Can I shine a light on, for example, Raw 7 that we're working with that is local, grown right, produce in partnership with Blue Hill. Very small, just started producing for food service, but it's so tasty. Their coconut nut and honey patch and potatoes are so tasty. How do I tell the story through that food? How do I tell the story of sustainability, of sourcing right, of reducing waste because I didn't peel the carrots on that particular dish? How do I tell the story that, maybe that farmer is minority owned or women owned business, right? So to me, going and buying a dish is beyond the sustenance of that point in time. I'm hungry equals I'm going to eat something.
mhm,
I'm hungry equals I'm going to spend some money on something that I want to eat, but this something I don't want it to make me tired. I don't want to feel heavy or I don't want to have the bellyache. Maybe I have some restrictions. I want to know that my money that I paid went for something that I believe in. All this is needs to be told through the food, right? And something that we are heavily thinking about before designing any dish.
mhm. It's really interesting to hear you frame it that way because it makes me think of why I want to have conversations like this on the show because we're talking about language, but food is a language, as you said. And when you're putting a story together and you're telling that story and you're including these inclusive origins, whether it's women owned or minority owned or small batch or sustainably farmed and et cetera. It's from where I'm sitting, it's a story of how our communities are connected, and it's a story of how we belong with one another and how we work together to create something that a lot of people may not even give a second thought to of how it's created and how it's put together, how it's built. So that's, I think, as being a chef, I think it's really important that you are connecting those dots in those communities and bringing people together, and you're able to tell that narrative and tell that story in that way, similarly to how we do with language, or whether we're writers or orators, speech givers. And I think in the human condition, we all want stories. We all crave stories. We want to hear stories. So I'm putting that together in my head maybe for the first time, that, I know that language is that food is a language, but in this way, I'm just putting it together in my head for the first time, really understanding how behind the scenes, it's bringing people together and it's sharing community among that. And that's so powerful.
Yes, it's important for me that my chefs will know not only the distributor, but the farmers that this distributor
Hmm.
works for. So with a distributor, we did a tour to visit some of the farms in our area so my chefs can meet the people that at the end, the product that they grow, we serve. This is it's like knowing your heritage or knowing your uncles, right? Or knowing extended food service family that you have. But I think going back to your point, in a DEIB, to me, the B is the strongest and the more because the D is what dictates everything, right? If you feel belong, you really wouldn't matter where you are and where you come from because you just feel belong. I don't need to make a case for the fact that I am a woman or something along those lines, right? I just feel belong, right? And I think the sense of feeling belong and what resonated with me is one of our employees a couple of years ago, we had a roundtable on diversity. And she said, and she's coming from an Asian heritage, she says, people love our food, but don't like us.
Mm.
And it stopped me in my tracks, right? How true is that? Oh, I love this cuisine. I love this food. But do you also appreciate the culture and the people that this food represents and what it means to them? And I think that's the beauty of the language of food that I have the privilege and the obligation to tell, even if it's in a snippet throughout the days.
Yeah. That's People love our food, but they don't love us. That's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking.
It's
It's
heartbreaking.
heartbreaking. And if you start thinking about it in a non-biased way, each one between their own four walls, I think if you're honest with yourself, you'll say, "Oh my God, I'm seen here as well," saying, "Oh my God, I love X cuisine," but then maybe in a different sentence, say something not so complimentary to where this cuisine came from. This food is a reflection
Mhm.
of that culture, and it has a statement and it has a room in their hearts, holidays, home, and I think it's something so personal that I personally have a lot of respect for because it's an entryway to somebody's life.
Exactly. Oh man, exactly.
Okay.
It's interesting because when we talked, you earlier, you did tell me about language and what it means to belong and who gets to belong, and the role that it had in shaping your identity and your trajectory in the culinary profession.
I think again the sense of respect, right? So in a kitchen, when you work in a kitchen, when I came to the United States and started working in kitchens, the predominant language in kitchens is Spanish. I had no idea. Zero words in Spanish, never spoke Spanish. It's not a common language, wasn't a common language in my childhood. And so I made it a point to understand my team's, the music that was playing it
Mhm.
was always Spanish. I can sing Mana. I know the words to most of their songs. I don't understand half of the words I'm singing, but you know, instead of changing music to music I love hearing, I learned to listen to the music my team liked hearing. I
Mhm.
learned to listen to how they communicate, even though it may not be the nicest words, but how they joke with each other, and respect them in their worlds and not come in and try and force my style. I'm an immigrant as well. What right do I have as an immigrant to, ride over somebody else's, who's an immigrant as well, right? It's it, it coming here and living as an Israeli, was not an option. I am an American. I chose to live in the United States, and I wanted to live as part as if I belong, right? And I wanted to be accepted like I belong. And to do that, I needed to learn the culture and understand the nuances, the urban knowledge, right? What do you say? Thank God I watched football since I was younger. I knew that culture, but really understand what moves people here, how people feel their weekends in. And who am I to say, this is so shallow. So, why? I think all that, and that's something that I always say to people that ask me, well, what would you advise to people that want to move to a different country? And I say, come humble. Come humble. Don't assume that you're coming in knowing better than anyone else. I'm going into a different culture. I need to be part of this culture and belong as this culture before I say anything. And I think that's part of being in a kitchen.
Yeah.
It's belonging to this culture of kitchen. In a kitchen culture, we roll our sleeves, we do what needs to get done because at the end of the day, at certain points where we start and you need to have food ready and you need to execute the food. You can deal with everything afterwards. But in a kitchen, there is hierarchy, but in the grand scheme of things, this hierarchy needs to come from a point of respect. You need
Right.
to play into each other's strength. You need to listen to each other's ups and downs. You need to be there for each other because we depend on each other to make it happen.
Mhm.
If you don't work as a team, if you don't belong as part of that machine, this machine cannot be the best it can be.
Mm.
So, if I think anyone who comes into the kitchen and doesn't moves up and looks at this engine that is called the kitchen,
Mm.
right, in a forest level rather than just trees, it will be very hard to belong in an environment.
Yeah. When you came to New York and you had these new experiences, it's brand new. And I thought of this as you said, you're here and you're hearing Spanish a lot for the first time. And you're in culinary school. Were there dishes that you were exposed to, even, in your internship? Were there dishes you were exposed to for the first time and things that you encountered for the first time? What were they?
Everything almost, traditional Mexican cuisine. What did
Hmm.
I know about mole, like really, and the spices and the fragrancy of spices? Yes, I knew that from Middle Eastern cuisine, but they had no idea about chili and the complexity of drying or soaking or roasting, for example, just to see my team cooking for themselves, right?
Mhm.
And then when I interned in Danielle, oh my God, the finest, that doing the finesse of like the one dish that I can think about that still resonate with me is a honeydew and lobster bisque that Danielle used to do. Combination of never ever in my life thought about. Who would have think to put like a melon, you know, and lobster bisque at the
Yeah.
same, but it was heaven, right? Just the sweetness you can in my head it makes all the sense. But at the time it was totally new. I'm dating myself now, right? But I had a little pocketbook and I wrote things that mental note, that I wanted a cucumber salad or how Danielle confit tomatoes or confit fennel, things that I haven't seen before, techniques that I didn't know before, how you concentrate flavors. Fantastic.
Mhm.
New York was like a playground. I came as a white canvas,
Yeah.
right? Just wanted to soak it all. I
Yeah.
remember going into an Indian, to Kalustians, right? Into the Indian ice cream in the city. I'm standing there like a kid in Toys R Us,
That's me
you
when
know?
I go there.
Right. And at the time, 60% of the spices, I have no idea what they are.
Yeah.
Right. So you ask, you taste, you smell. I think that's the beauty of you can never, ever, ever know it all. Ever.
Mhm.
There is
Yeah.
no one, I don't care how well traveled you are or how smart you are. You just can't
Mhm.
because it goes so deep and it goes so wide that it's just undoable. And it's always a journey of discovery.
Mhm. Were there any spice or flavor profiles that you noticed that paralleled between your cuisine back home and what you're encountering here.
100%, mainly Latin cuisine and
Okay.
specifically some of the Mexican regions cuisine. Again, just the use, and it all depends on the terroir, right? So yes, it's shocking, but then when you stop and think about it, and wait, look at the journey or where this ingredient traveled from, or the terroir, you're like, duh, of course it makes sense, you know. But when you see it in the food, you say, oh my God, cilantro and parsley and all the spices and tomatoes and garlic. Wait a minute, what am I talking about? Latin cuisine or Middle Eastern, Mediterranean cuisine, right? All
Mhm.
of a sudden, the similarities are there, but the nuances of amounts, fresh or not fresh, toasted or not toasted. And this is how you peel another layer and another layer of complexity of how you can drive one ingredient in so many ways,
Mhm.
depending how and where, right? And how does it taste? You know, black pepper in India will be so much more floral and fragrant than a black pepper that has traveled and, and made it here. I don't know after how many months being plucked from the. So, I just picked up, I was just in New York City at a farmer's market yesterday and picked up lemongrass. It's been a while since I've seen lemongrass being grown. It was like scallions. How often do I see lemongrass that is like scallions here and not as dry and fibrous? And I brought it home. We made a quick squash curry dish, but we also just brewed tea, lemon verbena and the lemongrass and mint, a big part of like happiness. No, being happy. I could hear the birds chirping. Yeah.
You were telling me your thoughts about who you want to be around food, and I'd love to hear who you want to be around food.
It's an ever changing question, right? I think the more I learn about food and feeding, and with the experience that I have, my age, right, the more I come to understand that, my role now is to be the person that other females stand on her shoulder to make their career smoother
Mm.
in the industry. Because I started the industry as the only female in the kitchen, needing to be one of the guys, which was comfortable for me because I was always a tomboy. But, at the end of the day, what if you're not? What if you're a girly girl and you like to be in the kitchen?
Mhm.
Does it mean that you don't belong? Does it mean that you don't fit? It doesn't mean anything. It just means that the environment needs to be more accepting. And I think with the years, it evolves. Once upon a time, I see myself as somebody who's helping to shape the role of food in somebody's life, but also the generation that is coming behind me will try to maneuver with tremendous changes, tsunami level changes that are in our industry, being
Mm.
technology, being lack of labor, being our supply system and food system. And we just scratched the surface in COVID to see how non-resilient we are. We thought that we're so resilient that we live in the world of plenty. And here we are, a pandemic that caught us by surprise without being able to figure out how we mobilize food from point A to point B where it's needed, but it's not geared. It's geared to be delivered to C. So we can't change this delivery point because the system is so clunky and so convoluted. So I think my role is shifting as I'm evolving in my career.
What happened during COVID that shifted things so dramatically?
So I think we always said, listen, in our profession, no matter what, you'll have a job. You'll
Mhm.
have a job.
Yeah.
People always need to eat. And then came COVID and totally plucked this carpet from underneath us. Because now restaurants are closed and people don't go out. And so how do you feed? And how do you can go to somebody else in the kitchen? How do you reinvent yourself around food? And I think the restaurant that survive are restaurants that are truly, truly know who they are and true to the passion of feeding others, but also not afraid of change
Mhm.
and adopting really quickly new ways of doing things. But on the food system, it showed how dependent we are globally, how convoluted we are on bringing food items from the farm. to whatever processing center, to a distributor, to its end destination. There's too many hands. The food is exchanging too many hands in the
Right.
process, to making it transparent and fair enough to the end.
Mhm. So how have you noticed that chefs and restaurants and other entities are working to not be so reliant on this chain that failed them?
Some have no options, and they have to because that's the only chain available. This chain didn't break and reformed.
Mhm,
The damage COVID didn't wasn't that magnified, to that level.
mhm,
But I think people understood that there are other ways, or that we owe it to ourselves to find less convoluted ways to the farm,
mhm,
more connections to the growers or suppliers that are not necessarily through second and third hand. But I also think our distributors understood that they have a responsibility here to connect their suppliers with who they supply to, and try and promote that discussion as a win-win situation.
mhm.
I think like anything, it's a change that it's going to take time because its magnitude is huge,
Right.
but at least it bubbled it up to the conversation
Yeah.
of how can we do things better? How should we do things better? Are the responsible parties in this food chain that need to rethink how they're operating
Mm.
for us to have a sustainable industry?
I hope that our listeners understand and have some compassion for our restaurateurs and our chefs who are working so hard to make things look seamless, right?
And
Because
our farmers
and
that
our
have to
farmers
supply no matter,
absolutely.
rain or shine, right? At the end of the day.
Absolutely. So, are you seeing more women you're seeing more women in the kitchen now, and how has the appearance of more women being in the kitchen and maybe in greater roles in the kitchen, how have you noticed that changing in your time here in the culinary world?
It's changing, not fast enough.
Okay.
No, not fast enough. I would have loved to see more women in the kitchen. I think I don't need to say that over and over again. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of smarter people than I am that have delved into why and how teams that are diverse are significantly better.
Yeah.
They operate better, they create better, they manufacture better, they drive better. Just because you bring different colors, smells, opinions to the table. And I think females in the kitchen is only a component of that. For me, diversity is not only females in the kitchen, it's everybody.
Mhm.
But because it was such a stark, dire need between male versus female in the kitchen, and it still is the story. You still see more female veering towards pastry, which a life work like balance more than the savory kitchen, and not so much in the savory kitchen where you need to work weekends, evenings, night services, things along those lines. I would love to see the culinary industry arranging itself to work more like a corporate world. There is no reason why. It's a culture and it's a mind shift for the most part. And if you look at the restaurants, you say, okay, the restaurants of the future, we really want retention. We really want people that stay with the restaurants for a longevity of time. So your investment in somebody actually has fruition and things along those lines. Kitchens that are run by female tend to have a higher attrition and retention numbers because this emotional intelligence that females tend to bring to a kitchen goes a long way. Goes a long way. And it's okay because men in the kitchen have toolkit that has things that I don't have. But on the flip coin, I have a toolkit that has things that they don't. And
Mhm.
I think it's only this combined toolkit that can really, really undermine success. So to your question, yes, there are more, but not enough.
Yeah.
Not enough. We're
Yeah.
not even close to a 50-50 yet.
Mm.
I would love to see more executive female chefs
Mhm.
really making an impact in it.
In your opinion, as you said, female chefs have a different attention than male chefs do in the kitchen. When you're saying female attention, what is that? What have you noticed that is? What does that look like to you?
Female can pick on a vibe.
Mm,
in a kitchen. I can come in a kitchen and sense that there is tension, sense that something is wrong, sense a body language, see that somebody is not their best, and I can go and ask, are you okay today? And look you in the eyes and
mhm,
say, hey, Elle, everything okay?
mhm.
And you can say, yes, everything is fine. You can say, great, I'm here for you. Just, right? Or you can say, not a great day today. And I can ask you, do you want to step aside and talk about it? I think for female, it comes a little bit more inherently.
Mm,
Ways of doing things like that, ways of coming, situation that can be emotionally tense and diffusing them before. I think females can bring perspective on work in a kitchen and you can say, I'm not sure it's going to be liked by everybody. Can I just be the voice of, right? We're often male, just not because they don't care. I want to, it's very important to say, it's not coming from not caring. It's, we're processing things differently,
Yeah,
right? And when there is a to-do list, you need somebody who's like staying on the task. And you also need somebody to make sure that how you stay on task is going to be the best way at the right moment. And I think this is where we complement each other, and that's the emotional
absolutely.
intelligence that female often bring into a kitchen.
Tell us about working with restaurant associates. I know you've been with them for some time, and tell us a bit about what your role looks like. And we love restaurant associates, so I'd love to hear how it's been going in your
Me
in,
too.
for
Me
you.
too. People ask me, how is it, like changing my career and, such a late phase in my career. And I say the one thing that resonates the most with me when I started working with restaurant associates, I said, I feel like I came home. That everything I did until now, that my past, everything congregated and led me to this forest. How lucky am I to work for a company that first and foremost led by chefs. So our CEO, our COO are all chefs. I'm a chef. So the knowledge, understanding of this culture, of what does it mean, is inherited. It's just being thread through our DNA so deep. But we start everything with delicious because we believe that if something is really delicious, then if it's healthy for you and good for the planet, the secondary, third things are all cherries on top, right? Are all cherries on top. And it doesn't, it's a non-issue because it's delicious.
Yeah.
So, I think working for an environment that appreciates food, that appreciates wisdom and experience. Restaurant associates in general and Compass in general, restaurant associates in particular, because restaurant associates is a sector of Compass. The appreciation that the company has for experience and wisdom is far to none. I have not seen it
Mm,
anywhere in my career, that we have young people coming in, we have people in their mid career coming in, we have people who've been with a company for a long time. And those perspectives are how the magic happens because we're not locking into one way or another. We're very, very agile in how we do things because we know that our clientele is changing. We know that the demand is changing. We know that how people perceive and react to food is changing. It's not breakfast, lunch, and dinner anymore. There is snacking, there is burgerable moments, there is TikTok thing, there is, it's like there is AI. There is a lot of stuff. We have to stay open.
mhm.
And I'm so privileged that I can do everything I love around food and around innovation for a living.
So I'm so happy for you to be with
You.
restaurant associates, and they are absolutely terrific. And I'm so happy that I want to just say a special thank you to them for introducing us and for facilitating this conversation. And I've learned so much from you in this short time that we've been speaking. So I know that they're truly amazing. I would love to know what some of your favorites are. What do you have a dish? And this might be like picking a favorite child. So if you don't, it's perfectly okay, but is there a dish that you love to make?
There is no one dish I love to make. I blow with the wind. Depends on the season. Depends on something I saw. It can be something I saw in the market. But soup is my comfort.
Oh, okay. Are you a soup in the summer person?
I'm a soup in any day.
All year
Listen,
round soup.
all year round soup.
What soup do you make the quickest?
Probably tomato soup is the quickest.
What soup has the most ingredients that you make?
Ooh, that's hard. Well, I just made kind of sort of a minestrone, but it depends, because if I make the stock by
Mhm.
myself, I soak the beans and the chickpeas and, in advance and cook them. So I didn't use canned ones. So I have like a Moroccan soup that has starting with ginger and garlic and onion and then you do all that. So to me, I don't know. Each soup is a different thing, but it will be more like my Middle Eastern Moroccan that probably it's the kitchen sink type of everything
Okay.
goes in. But yeah, there is usually a pot of soup or
Okay.
leftover soup at home.
If you have to freeze a soup, which soup do you make that freezes the best?
Probably chicken soup.
What's a spice that's maybe you've always got on hand? A spice that you maybe put in you're cooking at home, maybe something that you put in most of what you're making.
Well, I always have cumin, paprika, and paprika at home.
Hmm.
Hot paprika and sweet paprika. I wouldn't say always. You're probably gonna have nuances. Cinnamon is one of them as well. Again, it's my Middle Eastern
Hmm.
heritage that when I think about the spices that I buy the most, replenish, the most, those are probably the ones that I will replenish the most.
Okay, that's great. That
Mhm.
sounds cinnamon, and cinnamon is so warming. Like I can only.
Yes.
Is there a soup that you put cinnamon in?
Yeah. Any cinnamon loves gamey meats. So
Okay.
if you have something with a lamb or something with like a hearty beef, so you put a little bit. You don't want people to say, "Oh, there's cinnamon here." No, you just
Hmm.
want to put a little bit of like, "Wow, there is a floral note that I can put my fingers on." Especially when you use ginger or turmeric or warm spices
Hmm.
like that, the hint of cinnamon goes really long way. Much like I put cayenne in my French toast better as well. So yeah, in the end, and milk mixture, I always put a little bit of cayenne
What a
with the
great
cinnamon.
idea. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm gonna write that
it's like a hot
down.
cinnamon.
The last question I have, and this is just personal because I'm a little lost and you are from the Middle East. What do I do with sumac?
Sumac. First of all, it's not the poisonous sumac. So,
Yes, I know.
people have, just so people will know. And sumac has a very lemony acidic, but more on the acid of a lemon, not the floral of a lemon type of a flavor. I do not cook with sumac. I finish with sumac. So for me, it's a finishing spice that I sprinkle. Any salad will be amazing where you have lemon juice and olive oil, a little salt, throw a little sumac in. Fish, anything that likes acidity, sumac. Ceviche, little sumac. Labane, because labane is acidic, the yogurt is, a little sumac sprinkled on top. Onions, I love taking onions and almost like pickling them, quick pickle with the sumac. It gives it the nice purplish color and it
Mhm.
really plays up the acidity of the vinegar that you're putting in. So that's just like right off the cap.
Okay. Thank you. Because I have it in the kitchen and I know it's like that citrusy part, but I just didn't know what to do with it. And
Shrimp scampi with a little bit of sumac. Lemon chicken, a little bit of sumac.
okay, I can do that.
You can do that.
Chef Einav, this has been such a fun conversation. I've had such a wonderful time chatting with you and learning from you.
My
Thank
pleasure.
I
I wish we could do that every day. Thank you.
I know, we should. I like to end each conversation with the same question, and that is, do you have any jokes, popular sayings, tongue twisters, cool slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice in any of your languages, Hebrew, German, English, Arabic, French, to share and teach us?
Ah, wow, so many. I was thinking about that and I was like, okay, words of wisdom, right? Because that's the most boring, heavy duty of the question. Is mise en place is for me a lesson for life.
Mm,
Right? We say mise en place. To me, mise en place is a way of living. To be as prepared as well prepared as you can, because life is going to always throw you curveballs. So try to at least box off what doesn't. That's my philosophy.
That's a way to live life for sure.
It's a way to live life.
Chef
Thank
Einav,
you. Yeah.
thank you so much. Oh, before I let you go, just one quick question. You've been talking with someone for quite some time about food and everything you love, but now it's time to go your separate ways. So, in the first language that comes to mind for you, what is the best way to say goodbye?
Late out.
Late out,
In Hebrew means see you later.
late out,
You will see each other again.
late
When you close.
out, late out,
Yeah.
late out.
I like because it's not a finale.
Yeah, yeah. Late
Yeah.
out, Chef Einav. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I'll be talking to you soon. Bye.
Perfect. Bye.
New episodes of Speaking Tongues are available every Monday, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to like and share episodes with other language lovers like ourselves.